Good evening, this is ENCA Moneyline, your money guide. My name is Sikim Kabateli. Coming up on the show tonight. Has South Africa's economy grown in the third quarter? Stats SA is set to release GDP figures on Tuesday. The country is estimated to have lost up to 20 billion rand in tax revenue in the past 5 years as a result of fake cigarettes. And we find out what the checklist should be for employers when checking employee qualifications. But first, here are your top stories. Well, Stats SA will release third quarter GDP figures on Tuesday. It will also release revised estimates of annual and quarterly GDP from the first quarter of 2002 to the second quarter of 2014. It will probably show that South Africa's economy is larger than previously thought, as it is bound to count more economic activity in the unrecorded informal sector. Stats SA says this is done every 5 years. It last published the results of the previous benchmark and rebasing exercise in November 2009, when the reference year was changed from 2000 to 2005. BHP Bulletin is embarking on some major cost-cutting measures. Today, the miner announced it plans to save almost 44 billion rand by the middle of 2017. The world's largest miner is currently battling falling commodity prices and is shedding non-performing assets. It says the latest cost-cutting moves would save about 4 billion rand more than what the miner had earlier predicted for the same period. The Resources Group plans to spin off its aluminium, manganese and silver businesses into a separate company next year. This, it's hoping, will drive productivity gains in its biggest business, iron ore. South Africa has one of the world's biggest illegal cigarette markets. The country is estimated to have lost up to 20 billion rand in tax revenue in the past 5 years. The Tobacco Institute of Southern Africa believes now is the time for government to act.
Representatives from more than 20 countries are meeting in Cape Town to discuss how to fight the sale of illegal cigarettes.
And criminals have no qualms about selling to children.
The size of the market here makes it one of the 5 biggest in the world. More than 60% of illicit cigarettes are manufactured locally. The tobacco industry believes it's becoming an international crisis.
The proceeds from that is actually funding human trafficking, where they have young girls trafficked to use as sex workers. It's shocking. Things were mentioned of other hard criminal things which are funded by illegal cigarettes.
Law enforcement agencies say it's a bigger problem than just huge losses to the economy, and it needs a global approach.
By working together and having access to each other's information, and then using an intelligence-led policing method, we can then target the most harmful organised crime groups that we should be looking at with our limited resources.
But it's not all bad news. In the last year, the illicit trade has been in the decline. But hawks believe that more public awareness is needed to make further inroads.
For consumers, it's also a challenge because instead of a person to buy a 35 rand pack of tobacco, they will go to the 10 rand pack. For the consumers, it's a jackpot. But we are saying things cannot run that way.
The institute is hoping that police and government will come up with a plan to tackle the illegal trade in tobacco products. Bonga Dlulane, Cape Town.
The South African Qualifications Authority wants to set up a public record of people who lie about their academic qualifications. Acting SAA boss Nico Bezuidenhout is the latest in a string of senior officials accused of misrepresenting their credentials. He doesn't have any post-matric qualifications, despite the airline's annual reports claiming otherwise. The authority says companies don't spend enough time verifying applicants' CVs.
Globally, more and more people are lying about their credentials.
Over the last 3 years, for example, the number of fraudulent ones that we've received and that we confirmed as fraud is in the region of about 1.3%. Our experience has been that to be a credible institution is already a deterrent for people, and so they don't take a chance. If you know that nobody's going to check, then you take chances. And that is what's happening, I think, in the private sector largely.
Fake qualifications have cropped up in the public sector as well. Struggle stalwart and former Minister Paulo Jordan uses the title Doctor, but there's no record of his PhD. SABC Board Chairperson Ellen Chabalala claims to have a degree from UNISA, something the university denies. And a High Court has ordered the suspension of the broadcaster's Chief Operating Officer, Hlaudi Motsoeneng, for several reasons, including misrepresenting his credentials.
It is very serious. If you have people that lie at that particular level, it also says something about the integrity of the individuals. We must be able to encourage companies more and more to say, don't just accept what people say. What you need to do is to verify that.
The authority is investigating the possibility of setting up a register for those found to have lied about their academic achievements. Laran September, Pretoria.
Now, research released in August this year in the United Kingdom showed that 1 in 3 employers admitted to never checking candidates' degree qualifications. In a survey of 100 employers, most said that they never asked for applicants' proof of degrees and took everything at face value. But asking for proof of degrees seems to be a critical step. So this evening, we take a look at what you as an employer should be checking for when recruiting. For this discussion, I'm joined in studio by Hilary Myberg, who's Executive Head at DAV Professional Placement Group. Hilary, thanks so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me.
I'm amazed at that statistic, and I wonder if it might not be similar here at home.
No, it definitely is. Definitely is. I think that what's important in the recruitment process is that you have a verification step in that. So you can't just take what people are saying at face value. You can't accept what the CV says to be 100% true. You have to build in steps that take it further than that.
And we're going to talk about what those steps should be. But in your experience, is it common for people to just make up their qualifications? We've talked in the package that we've just watched now about the high profile cases. Obviously those are going to get attention, but there are those that don't make the headlines.
Yeah, no, we definitely find that in the recruitment industry. I think you've got to have a process of screening out candidates. So deciding which candidates are the right candidates to bring into the recruitment process and which you sort of screen out. I think that when you have a well-established process, you will screen out those candidates before you even get to qualification verification. Okay. But yes, we absolutely are seeing it. I would say the statistic would be sort of 3 out of 10 where the qualification isn't as they've said on the CV.
And what are people claiming? Degrees? Is that the popular thing? What are people claiming?
I think it depends on the level that you're recruiting at. So if you're recruiting at artisan level, they'll be claiming the trade. Yeah. If you're recruiting at a higher level, then that's what they'll be claiming. Yeah. So we see it across the board.
Okay. So what's the process then? You're looking for a CEO of an airline, let's say. What would you be looking for in terms of qualifications?
I think it depends on, from our perspective, it depends on what the client is looking for. So the client always draws up the sort of critical criteria that they're looking for. And so as a recruitment company, we work strictly according to what our clients are looking for. Okay. I think the process to follow to make sure that the person that finally gets the offer has got what they say they have is, I suppose, a stepped approach, and I think also a fair approach. So you have to, what you apply to one person, you have to apply across the board. Okay. You can't sort of discriminate to say this person's, the institute on their qualification is X, and so we don't have to check it. It's the same process across the board, and if you're following that, I think you should be safe.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that then. So what you would do, who does the actual checking? Would it be you as the recruitment agency, or does the onus lie on the company itself to check this?
I suppose it depends on who is the person who's responsible for the recruitment process. Sometimes the companies work through an agency, sometimes they do that process themselves, but I suppose the process always has to be the same. So from our perspective, the first thing that we do is make sure that we've got a copy of those certificates, but again, you don't take them at face value. You have them verified through a third-party verification agency. We use a company called MIE, but I know there's a few others out there. And that company goes directly to the institute to make sure that what the candidate says they have in fact completed at that university. So it has to be verified.
Okay, and you find that the institutions are happy to share that information. Are they playing ball?
They definitely are. I think what we're seeing in some institutions, and also depending on the age of the qualification, we're finding a little bit of a delay or quite a process to get that verified, because some of the archives aren't in the state that they should be. But yes, absolutely, there is a process, and they're happy to share that.
And the cost of this exercise, is it a costly exercise? Maybe that's why employers just don't do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's costly. I suppose it depends on who you're asking whether it's costly or not. But I think you have to ask yourself, what is the cost of not doing it? The reputation of the company on the line, the embarrassment of finding out this process at the back. So I think that it's money well invested.
And do you find that when you do find cases where you can't verify someone's qualifications, that the company is willing to act quite quickly, that the process doesn't drag itself out? What happens?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the candidate is then just excluded from the process.
And going forward, you take them off your books? How would it work?
Yes, no, we wouldn't work with a candidate whose qualifications we wouldn't be able to verify.
So do you agree then with Sakwa, who's saying, look, maybe what we need is a database of people who have lied, essentially, about qualifications that they don't have. Maybe if we've got that, there's a naming and shaming element to it, that it might stop?
I think it's a really good idea. The one thing that I would caution against is making sure that obviously the checks are done before a person's name is put on that register. What I've found is that some institutes are not willing to share that the candidate has completed that qualification if all their fees have not been paid up. So we've also had that scenario. So qualification has been complete, and they share that with you verbally, but there's outstanding fees. So I would just want to make sure that before somebody's name is put on a database like that, it is in fact that they haven't completed it.
Okay, because otherwise you could be causing further reputational damage for an individual.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time today. That was Hilary Myberg, who's Executive Head at DAV Professional Placement Group. After the break, we're going to take a look at a Forex firm in the UK that's hoping to save consumers some money. More on that story after the break. You're watching ENCA Moneyline, your money guide. Stay with us.